Okay, so in previous lecture, we have seen what is meant by supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So whenever levels are given and whenever we are learning in that particular environment, wherever class levels are given, that particular learning is termed as supervised learning because we are learning in the presence of class levels. The class levels are there to guide us that which is going to be apple and which is going to be orange. Therefore, such learning will be called to be supervised learning. But in some situations, it may happen that class labels are not given. So we don't know which one is apple and which one is orange. We are just given with set of fruits and we have to perform analysis on that set of fruits. That particular analysis or that particular learning in the absence of class labels. When class labels are not provided, whatever we are learning, that is nothing but a unsupervised kind of learning. So supervised learning and unsupervised learning, these are the two basic types of learning. And these types depend on the environment in which we are working. Now, these are just a broad types of learning methods. Apart from this, there are deep learning, then there is reinforcement learning. There are such learnings, those are quite advanced types of learning. And anyhow, even if it is deep learning or reinforcement learning, that has something to do with this supervised and unsupervised learning. Once we are compatible with supervised learning and unsupervised learning, we'll just have glimpses of reinforcement learning as well as. So yesterday we have seen a broad idea of what is meant by supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So how exactly now that was a conceptual discussion. What is basic idea of supervised learning and what is the basic idea of unsupervised learning? That we have did yesterday. That discussion we did yesterday. But how it is going to work in real life? How we are going to have that in a particular situation that we will see today. So supervised learning is the type of machine learning in which machines are trained using well-labeled training data. So well-labeled training data, it means that whatever learning we are going to perform, that will be in the presence of class level. Therefore, it will be named as supervised machine learning. And on the basis of the data, machine predicts the output. So on the basis of this available data, on the basis of this available labeled training data, machine will learn something, and on the basis of this data, in future machine will predict the output. The labeled data means some input data is already tagged with the correct output. So correct output is given. So in this particular situation, this is going to be the correct output. This thing is given. So whenever we are fitting regression model, exact data on response predictors is given or independent variables is given, and also data on dependent variable. Data on response also has to be given. Only then we are in a position to apply any regression or any curve fitting kind of thing. So that correct output has to be given, and in that particular context, whatever learning we are doing, that is supervised machine learning. So in supervised learning, the training data provided to the machine work as the supervisor. So this training data works as a supervisor because that particular data knows what is going to be the orange and what is going to be the orange apple. So in that particular sense, class levels are given. It means that which one is going to belong to this particular category and which one is going to belong to other category. Those things are given so that this training data or class levels in the training data, they will work as a supervisor that teaches the machine to predict the output correctly. That particular training data will make that particular machine to learn out of this data and it will correctly predict the output. It applies the same concept as a student learns in the supervision of the teacher. Here teacher is nothing but data. So training data that will work as a teacher. So unlike the traditional system, there has to be some human being who will moderate the situation, who will facilitate your learning mechanism. Unlike that, we are now surrounded by the data, and that data, that experience is going to teach us something. And therefore, this is supervised learning where we know from the available data that what is going to be correct and what is going to be wrong, or what is going to be yes level and what is going to be no level. Supervised learning is a process of providing input data as well as correct output data to the machine learning model. This is the correct data. This is not the predicted output data. These are the observed output values. So observed input data as well as observed output data. Correct output data will be given to the algorithm or machine, and then it will learn out of that data. The aim of supervised learning algorithm is to find a mapping function to map the input variable x with the output variable y. So something like this. Depending on this function and the way in which it learns, based on that there are more types of supervised learning also. There are subtypes of this method also. How supervised learning works? How actually now conceptually particular situation, whatever we are learning, that is supervised learning, that all those things are okay, but how exactly it is going to work? How practically we are going to implement it? So in supervised learning, models are trained using labeled data sets, where the model learns about each type of data. So naturally, we are expecting every type to be present in the data. So whenever we discussed about imbalanced data in previous lectures, so in that imbalanced data, for a particular case, suppose for the person who were having cancer, that data is quite bulky. Say 200 such entries are there, and the data on non-cancerous human being, that was of size 3. There were only 3 cases who were not having the cancer, whereas there were 300 cases who were having the cancer. So that one is imbalanced data. So every type has to be represented in the data. Only then it will, if you give say 20 oranges to a child and only one apple, and then if we ask that particular child to learn out of those fruits, and then whenever in future we throw some fruit in front of him, and if we ask that particular child to classify it, he may or may not be able to do that because he haven't encountered more apples in the life. He, if we want he to correctly identify apple, then we should give enough knowledge, ample knowledge about the apple. So sufficient data regarding apples has to be given. So only giving one apple, that will not make that particular child comfortable with identifying the apple. And therefore, enough data has to be there for the every type. So each type of the data, if there are say 4 class level, if there is a class level having 4 categories, then all 4 category data corresponding to all 4 categories has to be given to the model. Once the training process is completed, the model is tested on the basis of test data. A success, that test data need not be a subset of training data all the time. Ideally, it is taken to be something different than the training set. Then it predicts the output. The working of supervised learning can be easily understood by the below example. Now, this is a diagram I have taken from this website. So, in this particular diagram, this is the data. This particular is the observed data. In this particular data, there are different geometries. Some are square, some are triangles, some are hexagons like this. Hexagons are there, triangles are there, squares are there. Now these particular objects will be given to some algorithm, some machine, and that machine will learn out of that data. And then in future, whenever we throw certain geometry towards that algorithm, then that algorithm will identify correctly whether that is hexagon, square, or a triangle. But before that, whenever we are giving this particular data to model, firstly at the start we should tell that particular algorithm that this is a triangle. So just giving this particular object to the model will not be enough. We should tell him that this particular shape is triangle, this particular shape is triangle, this particular shape is square. So whenever we are giving this kind of information, we are labeling the data. So whenever we are saying that these are the squares and these are the hexagons, so we are giving that information to the model. It means that we are giving labels to the model. So corresponding to each geometry, there will be class label, and that class label will take 3 values, either square, hexagon, or triangle. So these class labels will be given, and now model will calmly look into the matter. That model will understand the things. Okay, if this is the shape, if there are these many sides, then this is a square. If there are these many sides, then it is a triangle. If there are these many sides, 6 sides, then it is hexagon. 5 sides pentagon. Now here pentagon is not there. If there are 4 sides, sides are equal, then it is a square. If there are three sides, then it is a triangle. Something like this model will understand, and once model understands these things, then model is in a position to I correctly recognize the shapes. So in future, once this model has been trained, once this particular up to these steps have been encountered, this label data has been given to the model, and now model has correctly understood the concept that this particular thing is called to be a square, this particular thing is called to be hexagon, and this is a triangle. Likewise, model has learned something now, and now in future, suppose we will throw this particular square to the algorithm. Then that model, whatever previous knowledge it has got from the label training data, based on that data, it will understand that this is a square. So whenever we throw this as input to the algorithm, it will come up with the output as, okay, I have identified the object that you have thrown to me, and that object is a square. So machine will come out with a message like square, or it may come out like a message like triangle if the object that we have entered is a triangle. So likewise, once it learns to identify the shapes, then in future, whenever we give these particular kinds of shape, and now in the memory, in the storage of that particular algorithm, it knows only about three things: hexagon, square, and triangle. If we give something like say if we give pentagon, then it may or may not understand that particular object. And if still we want to have some outcome, then it will try to match it with either square or hexagon, whichever is nearby, considering the shape of that particular object, whichever is nearby object. According to that, it will tell us that this is hexagon or square, because that pentagon geometry, it never had encountered such geometry in life. So this is the first instance whenever it has come across such an object, and therefore whatever is there in its memory, based on that it will try to identify, and it will come up with the conclusion that either it is a pentagon or square, because that those are the only things that are stored in its brain, because those are the only things that this particular algorithm knows. So suppose we have a data set of different types of shapes which include square, rectangle, triangle. Now the first step is that we need to train the model for each shape. If the given shape has four sides, then all sides are equal, then it will be labeled. This is just like teaching to a small child. Whenever a small child is there and we are teaching something to that particular child, that if there is a geometry whose four sides are equal, if there are four sides and all those sides are equal, then call that particular object to be a square. If there are only three sides, then that object will be triangle. If there are six sides, then it will be named to be rectangle. Likewise, model will learn, and here you don't have to verbally tell the model this statement. You don't have to tell this particular statement verbally to the model. Whatever algorithm we are developing, based on that, model will identify this. So you have given these 40 objects which are named to be square, and all 40 objects are like this. They may be of different shape, they may be of different size, so to say, but shape is same. They are squares, they will be of different sizes. Their side will be here side will be say 3 units, here side will be say 5 units. So sizes will be different, but the overall geometry, overall shape will be the same. So that algorithm itself will identify the situation, and it will come up with certain knowledge with this. And whenever in future we throw certain geometry towards it, it will correctly identify whether it is a square, triangle, or hexagon. After training, we test our model using the test set, and the task of model is to identify the shape. The machine is already trained on all types of shapes, and when it finds a new shape, it classifies the shape on the basis of number of sides and predicts the outcome. What are the steps involved in supervised learning? First, determine the type of training data set. So what type of training data set we are having? Because based on the type of training data set, we are having different models to be. Now, suppose if we are given with the data, suppose we are provided with data and we want to fit a distribution. So fitting a distribution is nothing but modeling the data. Whenever we are modeling is nothing but what rule has generated that data. We want to estimate that particular rule by which that data has been generated. That rule may be this normal distribution. That rule may be y is equal to alpha plus beta. All these are rules. All these are statistical models. So whenever data is provided and we try to find a model that will a rule that will model the data, that particular phenomena, that particular process is called to be modeling of the data. So now whenever a data is given and using some machine learning algorithm, we want to learn out of that data, we want to fit a certain model to the data, then firstly we should identify the type of data, because if number of accidents data is given, then we cannot fit normal distribution to that data. Or if weights of different persons, weights of say 1,000 persons are given, we cannot fit Poisson distribution to this particular data. So what is the type of data? Based on that, we should decide which model we should go for. So if the type of the data is number of accidents, then we should naturally think for the Poisson distribution. If the data given is data observed on weights of different people, then we can think of normal distribution. So the type of data that we have received, based on that, we should go for appropriate algorithm. And for that, firstly, we should understand the type of data that we are providing. So the first step will be first determine the type of training data set, because even if you perform all these steps correctly, suppose this is the data set and you are trying to fit normal distribution, so you have found out expected frequencies, observed frequencies are already given, so you have correctly performed all the calculations, you have correctly found out table value of t distribution, and then accordingly sorry, chi-square distribution, and then accordingly based on chi-square test for goodness of fit, you have taken the correct decision whether to declare that this fit is okay or not okay. You all these steps you have performed correctly, but the problem you have done is in the basic, that you have tried to fit a normal distribution to a count data of number of actors. So that is a problem. So even if you have performed all the steps correctly, all steps onwards, first onwards, you have correctly performed all those steps, but you have incorrectly identified the model and identified the model. You have in your guess regarding appropriate model for the data is not correct. If in that particular case, whatever modeling you have done, even if all the steps are correct, then that model is not going to be useful for future perspective. And therefore, these particular steps require an intensive care, because once we wrongly choose different models, it may happen that this particular normal, statistically talking, this it may happen that normal distribution becomes a good fit to the given data. So it may happen, but that doesn't make sense, because firstly comes common sense and then statistics. So based on this particular data, naturally we should go for the Poisson distribution, and statistically or scientifically we should verify our claim. So firstly, you have to determine the training data set type, what type of data we are having, and based on that, either we can go for classification or regression. Such things will happen. So in supervised learning, there are different types. So which type we should go for? For that, firstly, we should identify type of the training data. Select, gather the labeled training data. So whatever data we are having, all those labels are there or not, all entries are there or not. If there is some discrepancy in the data, if the data is not clean, then we have to make it clean. All those things should be done with respect to data. Then once data has been cleaned, if there is need of data integration or data transformation, that data integration in the sense, if we are having data from different sources, we will integrate that particular data. Or if there is need of transformation, data transformation, certain kind of transformation like variance stabilization transformation. So likewise, transformations, if they are needed, we will perform those transformations. And once data is in a position to get applied by some algorithm, then we will split the data set, whatever data set we are having, that data set, split the data set into training data set, validation data set, and test data set. So whatever data set we are having right now, that data set will be divided into these three parts: training, validation, and test data. Determine the input features of the training data set. Now, these input features, this terminology may sound somewhat difficult to you. Instead of that, suppose independent variables, because that is the terminology we are very well known with. So independent variables, predictors, covariates. So in a regression model, whichever are independent variable predictors Those are nothing but input features. Features, why features? Because these are the features on the basis of which we are going to recognize the object. Suppose in a particular database, suppose images of my face are stored in that particular database, and some other person, suppose A and B are two person, images of A from different angles are captured and those are stored in a database. Similarly, for this B, there are 10,000 images stored. In this particular database also 10,000 images are stored. Now, and these are labeled because these are the images of A, these are the images of B. That information is given to the algorithm. It means that it is a labeled data. Now, in this particular data set, these are the images of the person is A. And what are the independent variables on the basis of which variable we are going to identify that person? So, what is the color of eyes? That can be one. What is the color of hair? Whether the person is gray colored, having gray colored hair, black hair, or white hair, likewise, or whether that particular person is having beard or not, whether what about the shape of nose of that. Likewise, these things will be considered, and these are the features on the basis of which we are going to identify the person. So these are the features, these are the characteristics of that particular person or that particular class. Here we are calling person. Suppose whatever we discussed yesterday, suppose we are talking about oranges and apples. So what are the features of oranges? What are the characteristics of oranges that makes it orange? So there may be some characteristics which some other fruits also possess, but what are the distinguishing features, distinguishing characteristics of orange that makes it orange? Or what are the distinguishing features or characteristics that makes a particular fruit to be apple? So those features, they are having the information regarding the type of fruit. So those features or values on those characteristics or features will tell us whether that particular fruit is going to be apple or orange. And therefore, whatever independent variables or predictors we are using, this is a proper scientific, pure or theoretical science kind of thing, independent variables and predictors. But when it comes to the application, whenever we are practically implementing it, the terminology should be such that it should be compatible with practical users. So whenever we are, and in many times, even if you all people are statisticians in real life, whenever you are analyzing the data, many times you get confused between independent variables and dependent variables. So, visualizing the present practical situation and making that situation look like a theoretical situation in science, those are quite different tasks. And while establishing connection between these things, we may get misconfused. And therefore, whenever we have developed certain applied science, then whatever terminology we are incorporating over there, that terminology should be in terms of applied science only. That should not be in terms of theoretical science. At the back end, one should know, when whoever is the analyzer, that should know that is in applied science, in applied statistics, a certain phenomena is there. So what is its corresponding phenomena in theoretical science? That we should know. But whenever we are presenting this particular analysis to the client who is not having theoretical knowledge of the statistics, then we should come up with certain terminologies that are that particular client is well versed with, that particular client is comfortable with. Such terminology should be used. Type 1 error and type 2 error, these are the terminologies that pure statisticians may know, because we know the level of significance, we know what is going to happen when we say that type 1 error is there and type 2 error is there. But if we have the terminology as say FAR, false acceptance rate, or say false rejection rate. So that name itself tells that false rejection rate. So even if the hypothesis is even if the in false acceptance, suppose I'm talking about false acceptance. So even if the hypothesis is wrong, but still we are accepting it, and that is nothing but a false acceptance. And false rejecting means false rejecting means even if that hypothesis is correct, that needs to be accepted, but falsely we are rejecting it. Similarly, false acceptance rate, rejection rate, correct rejection rate, correct acceptance rate. Likewise, these terminologies are the terminologies that any layman can understand. So these are not the terminologies that are based on theoretical knowledge of the science or statistics. And therefore, in data mining, you will eventually, you will frequently you will come across such terminologies which are having some statistical connection. You will identify that this FRR is nothing but a type 2 error. Likewise, these concepts can be correctly mapped to the statistical concept, but still we are going to use these concepts. Even if corresponding counterparts have been already defined in statistics, still we are going to use these concepts because these are the concepts that a end user or client is going to understand. And therefore, but at the back end, in your brain, you should be aware about these things, that whenever you are whenever you are collecting the data on input feature, basically you are collecting the data on independent variable. So once we understand this, then we can understand what type of techniques we have to apply over there. And for that only we should understand it. Otherwise, for the client point of view, which is independent variable, which is dependent variable, that particular person will not know because they are not well versed with the theoretical science. So whenever actually having some analysis in theoretical science, that is quite easy because that analysis we are doing in closed door kind of thing. Whoever is there, all those are theoretical scientists and they know the terminology. But whenever you are doing something in applied science, you have to give that particular application to someone who is not very much aware about the statistics. Suppose some quality control technique is there and you have to implement it in some manufacturing industry. The person sitting over in manufacturing industry may not have idea about the theoretical science or what the kind of testing you are doing like that. So there you have to have direct connection with some non-statisticians, and there you have your terminology should be such that it will be accepted by that particular client. It should be understood by that particular client who is not from the statistical domain, and therefore such terminologies are there, and therefore this input feature, this particular terminology is there. So basically, input feature. Whenever we say input features, these are nothing but independent variables or predictors. Now, in regression, we have subset selection kind of thing. In many cases, if there are say k variables, out of those k variables, we may or may not deal with all the variables at a time. We will select prominent variables out of those k variables, and based on those variables only, we will continue our analysis. The same thing is done in machine learning also. You must have heard the word or terminology feature extraction. So feature extraction is nothing but out of the available features, what are the important features that we can understand, or we can extract the data on features, and based on that feature extraction is nothing but collection of information from this feature. Once we have from these features, once we have extracted information from these features, then we have understood something out of that data. Therefore, these terminologies make the sense. There are two things. Now, there are many terminologies which are being used by data scientists or computer scientists, and correspondingly, we are having corresponding terminologies in statistics. If we stuck up with those terminologies, whatever we have defined in statistics, if we stuck up with those terminologies, we won't get any application kind of thing, because whoever end user or client is there, he will not understand whatever analysis you have done or whatever terminologies you are using. So he will directly go to someone who is data scientist, who is directly applying the science instead of going towards a pure statistician. So if we want your statistics to get acceptance by the client, then you should talk in the language which is understood by the client. And that language is nothing but language of these particular words, input features. And so whatever we are using that, and whatever customer is understanding, that there is some gap in between, and therefore statisticians are scientists and scientists from other fields, they have captured this particular field. We know the basics, but we should explore, we should come forward, we should simplify those terminologies, and we should set terminologies which are acceptable by the client. And for that only, these terminologies like input feature or false rejection kind of things are there. So whenever such terminologies will come across such terminologies, we will have knowledge of both. We will study that terminology also, and we will also try to identify the pure theory terminology corresponding to that new terminology, so that it will be good for us to understand the concept easily. So determine the input features of the training data set which should have enough knowledge so that the model can accurately predict the output. Now, whenever these fruits are given there, now suppose this A and B, these persons are there, A and B, these persons are there, and based on features on their face, features regarding their face, we have collected the data, and based on that, we are going to identify the person. Now, whenever a person is giving their photographs for this database. Now, the nature of person, whether this particular person is kind or cruel, these things will not be able to. These things will not make any sense in whenever we are trying to identify the person using his facial expression, using the features on his face. So such kind of data is irrelevant in this case. So we should correctly identify those features which are having certain sense in identifying the person. So whatever our class label is there, the features should be such that they will justify the class label. So based on those features, we should be able to identify the class label. So such features should be shown. Now this I had taken just for the example, but as I have taken it now, let us give a thought on this particular also. Now, this you may feel that kind and cruel, these things may not play any role in facial expression. But if a person is kind enough, you can easily identify just by observing a person's face, you tell whether that person is kind or cruel. Because whatever is there in the mindset, that is being exhibited on your face or that is being displayed in your eyes. So these are, so even if those are not directly concerned with the recognition of the person, but still they are having certain ideas. So they are having certain impact on the facial expression. Now, in multivariate analysis, we have seen directly kind and cruel. These measures will not be there, but that kind will get reflected in your eyes or on your face, whether your face is smiley face or whether you are your face is like you are facing all the troubles in the world, you only are facing all the troubles in the world. If your face is like that, or if you are someone who is always frustrated, so all those expressions will be captured on your face. So in multivariate analysis, we have studied that whatever variables we are observing, behind those variables, there are certain factors acting upon. So these are the factors. So whenever we analyze these, this will come under factor analysis. These are the variables which are getting affected by these factors. So apart from this nature, there may be some mood of that particular person. That may be also one of the factors. So likewise, these factors will be there and factor loading will be there. So how that factor is getting affected on a particular variable, based on that certain loading will be there. But we'll not go in that particular detail. So whatever features are there which are helpful in identifying the class level, only those features will be considered. Then determine the suitable algorithms for the model, such as support vector machine decision tree. Based on the type of data, we will, whenever we see support vector machine, we will firstly identify prerequisite of the data, what kind of data we should have, then we will go for support vector machine. So whenever we are learning these algorithms, at the start we will see what type of data is expected for that particular algorithm. Execute the algorithm on the training data set. Sometimes we need validation sets to control hyperparameters, which are the subsets of training data set. So validation set, it may be subset of training data set, or ideally we can have some other data set apart from training data set, which will control, which can be used to control the hyperparameters, like in KNN classifier, what could be the value of K. So such kind of hyperparameters can be identified, can be fixed based on the validation data set. Then evaluate the accuracy of the model by providing the test set by applying that particular learning on the test set. If the model predicts the correct output, which means our model is accurate, or if it is not correctly predicting the output, then the level to which it is correctly predicting. Then if it is not 100%, then we can come up with certain accuracy measure, like if correctly identifies the unit, correctly identifies the object 90% of the time, 95% of the time. Likewise, we can come up with some accuracy measure of the model. There are two prominent types of the supervised machine learning. One is regression. Regression will be applied in the case when we are having class level as a numeric class level. And when class labels are categorical, in that case, we will be having classification algorithm. So regression algorithm, these are used if there is relationship between the input variable and the output variable. It is used for the prediction of continuous variable. Continuous variable, it means that those are measurable variables or quantified variables, such as weather forecasting, what amount of rainfall will be there, market trends. Below are some popular regression algorithms. Now, in regression, what are the different algorithms? So, one is linear regression. That one is one day algorithm where features and class labels, they are linearly related with each other. So, here class label is equal to something into first feature plus something into second feature plus something into last feature plus some function. So, this is kind of linear regression. So whenever independent variable and dependent variables they are functionally dependent on each other in a linear manner, then that is a linear regression. Similarly, whenever features and class labels are linearly dependent, whenever class label depends linearly on features, then that particular type of algorithm, that particular learning algorithm will be linear regression. Regression trees are there. Now, just focus on this word trees and in classification also we are going to have one tree. So whenever we are talking of, whenever we study that chart, say at classification and regression tree, CART, at that time we will understand why it is called to be tree, or in future we are going to call something to be forest. So if trees are there, naturally forest will come there. So we will study what is meant by forest also. So these are the linear regression trees. Then non-linear regression is there. Bayesian linear regression is there. You have understood. You have already studied Bayesian approach in estimation theory or in asymptotic or in testing, I think. So those approaches can be applied over here, and based on that, based on those Bayesian approach, we can have linear regression between class level and feature. Then polynomial regression, higher order polynomial regression is generalization of nonlinear. Then the other type of supervised learning algorithm is classification. Classification algorithms are used when the output variable is categorical. When output variable is categorical, we go for the classification, which means there are two classes such as yes, no, male, female, true, false. Even if there may be some cases where when there are three classes, four classes, it may be also the case. So it may not be always true or false. True, false cannot be said anything based on the given information. Likewise, there can be three categories: male, female, transgender. Likewise, there can be three categories: yes, no. I'm neutral about it. So whether you like Maggie, if this is the question, then yes may be the answer, no may be the answer. And there are some people who doesn't like. It's not like they like the Maggie, and it's also not like they dislike the Maggie. So they are very neutral about it. So such kind of responses may also be there. So output variable is categorical. That is the only phenomenon. It may be dichotomous or it may be manifold. So what are the algorithms that will be there for the classification? These algorithms are decision trees followed by random forest. Then whatever we have studied in regression we are having quantitative variable, but logistic regression is the case where we are having binary response. So whatever response variable or dependent variable or class label, if that class label is categorical in nature, then we can go for logistic regression. Then high dimensional objects can be classified using support vector machine. What are the advantages of these things are already there in the syllabus, so we will not discuss those things right now here. Whenever we come across those concepts, then we will see in detail of what is meant by support vector machine, logistic regression, and another thing. The advantages of supervised learning. With the help of supervised learning, the model can predict the output on the basis of prior experience. Prior experience is nothing but the training data. In supervised learning, we can have an exact idea about the classes of objects. How many classes of the objects are there? That idea we can have correctly. Supervised learning model helps us to solve various real world problems such as fraud detection. So whenever someone has done any fraud, so what were the features? What was his behavior before that particular fraud? So all those behavior data on those behavioral aspects will be considered, and based on that we can come up with certain models. So whenever in future certain person behaves in the same manner as someone who has already done the fraud, then we may get idea that he is going to have some fraud. Spam filtering. Whenever we are receiving the mail, whether that person mail, now whenever you receive a mail in your Gmail inbox, that inbox correctly, that inbox identifies the mail, and that mail, if it is spam, then it is directly thrown into the spam mail, because if it is small and if it falls, it gets landed in your inbox, there are chances that you may click on the mail, you may open the mail, and if there is some risky link given in the mail, then you may be clicking on that particular link, and then there will be some serious consequences of that. In order to avoid that, what this Google is doing is identifying the incoming mail, and if that mail is identified as spam based on certain features, if it has classified it to be a spam, then it will directly move it into the spam folder rather than to land it in inbox. So these algorithms have saved us from potential problems that we may encounter. So Google is doing a lot of data analytics. I have already told you that Google Analytics, something like data analytics, a parallel science is there. Google Analytics. There is vast kind of analytics being performed in the Google offices, and therefore that Google Analytics, you can just go over the internet and you can search what is meant by Google Analytics and what is the depth of that Google Analytics. Once we understand that, then we will be feeling very fortunate that whenever you are doing some data analytics kind of thing, you are making good things for the mankind, because you are saving mankind from potentially serious crimes or potentially serious problems that human may encounter. We are protecting human from those potential crimes. So this data, you can think for data analytics from that good point of view also. So there are some disadvantages of supervised learning. Supervised learning is a goody. Till this particular point, you may think that supervised learning is a goody kind of thing, but there are some disadvantages of supervised learning also. If there is some complex situation, it is just a classification and regression kind of thing. But if there is some complex problem than to just classifying an object or just either predicting the class level, or predicting the output value, predicting the class level value, or dependent value of the dependent variable. Just apart from this, if there are some other data analytics tasks to be performed, then this supervised learning won't be able to perform that particular analysis, and therefore this is the major drawback of supervised learning. Whereas the unsupervised learning can handle the complex task easily, because the way in which it has been built, therefore now here it is there is connection between a data entry and its corresponding class level, and that connection makes this supervised learning, that connection itself makes this learning to be a supervised learning, but that connection itself makes it a weak kind of learning. Because of that connection, we cannot consider entire data at one instance. As we know, in pair t-test, there is connection. So we cannot arbitrarily take any x and any y, and we can have analysis on those, because those are weight of a husband and weight of a wife. If this is the data, then they are connected with each other. So if your hypothesis is if the weight of the husband is more, then there it is more likely that weight of wife is also more. If this is your hypothesis, then there has to be correspondence between the observations. So because of that correspondence, some models are getting weakened, and same thing is happening over here in supervised learning. So supervised learning cannot predict the correct output if the test data is different from the training data set, and that is obvious because it has been trained on the training data set. So on test data, it may not perform correctly, and that is where we are coming up with uh, accuracy measures. What are the accuracy measures? Confusion matrix kind of thing is there, and based on that confusion matrix, we come up with accuracy measure for the supervised learning. So it has been trained on the training data set, and now it has been tested on some other data set. So naturally, we are not expecting it to perform with 100% efficiency. So whenever we are handing over that particular algorithm to the client, at that point itself, we are not 100% sure that it will perform 100 with 100% efficiency. So if we have trained some certain algorithm, if you have applied that algorithm on the test data, and now that is in a position to get employed in the real life. So employment of that particular model will be done in the real life. So that whatever model we are coming up with, that model will be set to use in real life. So whenever we are handling over that particular model to the client, and if client asks that is it correct now, whether it will perform okay. So at that time itself, we are not at that point itself we are telling them that we are not 100% sure that it will perform correctly. We are 95% sure that it will correct perform. Your efficiency, accuracy measure of the model is 99%, so it will perform with 99% effectiveness. So whatever we are handing over to the customer, that is not 100% efficient. So customer, it may happen that customer may take objection that whatever you are handing over to me, that is not a correct. But that is what we do in statistics. We are modeling uncertainty, and therefore we cannot be certain. If we are certain, then we might have been named as a god or monitor of this particular world. But because of this uncertainty only, this entire statistics is there, and we should respect that uncertainty. We should try for the 100% efficiency, but achieving that 100% efficiency is not possible all the times, and we should respect that fact also. Training required lots of computation times. Now, as the data becomes more and more bulky, the training to that particular, now if there is some child, and if we are if we are telling him to identify, if we are teaching him to identify oranges and apple, he will identify it. But at the same time, you might have stored some banana on a table, and he may see that banana. So he will get confused. What is that? So we have to train him regarding orange, apple, as well as banana. In future, it may come across some other fruit. So that fruit. So if we want that child to be correctly identifying all the fruits, then data will be quite bulky. So that bulky data will require more time to train that particular child. So likewise, whenever data becomes bulky, because we are teaching something that we know to someone who doesn't know, and so obviously that is going to take a time. In supervised learning, we need enough knowledge about the classes of objects. So, what are the classes? It means that class level, in other language, this particular sentence means that class level should be given. So, we should have enough knowledge about what are different class levels. Only then we are in a position to have analysis in terms of supervised learning. In unsupervised learning, now this we have already studied unsupervised learning also. So unsupervised learning is a type of machine learning in which models are trained using unlabeled data sets and are allowed to act on the data without any supervision. So as the data set is unlabeled, there won't be anyone or there won't be anything that will supervise the learning process, and therefore this particular kind of learning is unsupervised learning. The goal of unsupervised learning is to find the underlying structure of the dataset, group that data according to similarities, and represent that dataset in a compressed format. So it's just like a descriptive statistics kind of thing. If you are provided with a bulky data, we come up with mean and variance of that data. So instead of displaying entire data, we just display mean and variance of that data. So similarly, instead of displaying entire data, we'll display just cluster centroid. So that is nothing but a consolidation or compressing of the data. So as measures of central tendency and dispersions, they are used to compress the data. So instead of handling entire data, we'll just come up with some representative values. Similarly, we can represent the data using some compressed format. Suppose this is the example. These are animals. These are certain animals given over, and these animals we don't know which animal is. In fact, we don't know what is meant by cat and what is meant by dog. What are the names of these animals that we don't know? So this in raw data will be given to the machine, and machine also doesn't know who is cat, who is dog. Even now, just imagine that instead of cat, now at the back end of your brain, even if I say that you don't know these things, you are treating this to be a cat, this to be a cat, and this to be dog. So have some picture of some animal which you haven't witnessed yet. So something like in sci-fi movies in Hollywood, there are certain animals which you haven't encountered in real life. Imagine such kind of animals here and two different kind of animals here. So we don't know what are these animals. So this if we don't know the labels, then obviously that whenever we provide that data to a machine, that becomes a unlabeled data to the machine, and just machine identifies the pattern. This shape of this particular animal and shape of this animal, they are quite similar. The type of hairs that this particular person is that this particular animal is having, and the type of hairs of this animal, they are quite similar. So accordingly, they will group the animals and they will come up with this as one group and this will as second group. So likewise, now don't pronounce this name, don't think about this name, because whenever we are writing those names, it means that this is a label data. So these are certain kind of animals, and the other two, these are different kind of animals. Just remember like this. So this is the output of the unsupervised learning. So whenever a new animal will be given over here, that new animal will be identified as belonging to this group, belonging to this cluster, or belonging to this cluster. So what are the types of unsupervised learning algorithm? The first one is clustering. So what we have done over here, that is nothing but a clustering kind of thing. The other one is association. So as discussed yesterday, if suppose some person, suppose I have changed the object. Suppose a person has purchased a pencil, then he is more likely to purchase eraser also. So this is an association. So if at the end of day, if we collect the data on what customers have bought, so what are the objects that first customer have bought, what are the objects that second customer have bought. Similarly, if we are having observations on all the customers in a day, then we may find that whoever has bought the pencil, most of them have also bought eraser. So this kind of association we can find in the data. So whenever a new customer comes in and if he asks for a pencil, and if we hand over pencil to him, and if he is living from that particular shop, then we ourselves can ask that person whether you want the eraser. Then he may come up with, yeah, I want eraser, and thanks for reminding us. So a good relation can be built with the customer. That is additional byproduct, and moreover, our eraser got sold, so we have got some revenue out of that. So these kind of things can be used in order to increase the revenue. These are the types of algorithms which we will be using in unsupervised learning. K means clustering, K nearest neighbors, KNN, hierarchical clustering, non-hierarchical clustering, anomaly detection, neural networks, principal component analysis, independent component analysis, a priori algorithm, SVD, singular value decomposition. So these algorithms we will see one by one in unsupervised learning. What are the advantages of unsupervised learning? Whenever there are some complex tasks, those complex tasks can be easily performed using unsupervised learning, yeah, unlike supervised learning. In we don't have labeled input data. In unsupervised learning, we don't have labeled input data, and therefore unsupervised learning is used for more complex tasks as compared to supervised learning. Just understand this particular statement. Why unsupervised learning performs more complex tasks in a better way than supervised learning? Because of this. Because in unsupervised learning we don't have labeled input data. So that acts as a chain in your whenever you are getting stuck by a chain. It is kind of thing. So whenever class levels are given, you are stuck at one position. You don't have more freedom, so to say, and therefore there are some restrictions in case of labeled data. But whenever unlabeled data is there, whenever there is no correspondence, then you are free to have any kind of analysis, and therefore whenever we learned about supervised learning, we thought that this is the best way of learning because their class levels are given. But once we know about unsupervised learning, we will come to know that if those class levels which we were considering to be a good thing, those itself are making supervised learning to be a bad thing. Whichever thing is making that particular learning as a supervised learning, that same thing is making it weak. And in unsupervised learning, those class levels are not provided, and therefore these unsupervised learning algorithms can perform more complex tasks of data analysis. The other advantage of this unsupervised learning is it is preferable as it is easy to get unlabeled data in comparison to labeled data. In real life, it is more easy to get unlabeled data than to get a labeled data. So in real life, you will come across unlabeled data more number of times than the labeled data, and therefore whichever learning method analyzes this unlabeled data, that will be good for us, because the in less number of resources this analysis is being performed, and therefore unsupervised learning is preferred, as we are more probable to get unlabeled data than the labeled data. Things are always not all the good. Unsupervised learning is also having some disadvantages. Unsupervised learning is intrinsically more difficult than supervised learning, as it does not have corresponding output. So, in supervised learning, that idea may have percolated well in your brain, but this unsupervised learning, you still might be finding it difficult to understand what we are going to perform in unsupervised learning. If there are no class levels, then apart from clustering, what we are going to do over there, there is no much scope for doing the analytics. You may find that difficult to understand. So unsupervised learning is intrinsically more difficult than supervised learning, as it does not have corresponding output. Since output is not there, whatever methodologies we are going to see in unsupervised learning, those methodologies are quite complex and those are quite difficult to understand. The result of unsupervised learning algorithm might be less accurate, as input data is not labeled, and algorithms do not know the exact output of in the advance. So this is just like you are firing a bullet in the absence of light. Suppose there is no light, and in that particular phenomena, there is complete darkness, and in that particular environment, you are firing a bullet and you are targeting something. So it is that kind of thing in unsupervised learning. In supervised learning, you already know where is the target and how you have to hit it. But in unsupervised learning, you don't know the target. You don't know the target variable class level, and therefore it becomes quite difficult. But it's a challenging task, and that's a good challenge to go for a statistician. So unsupervised learning, even if it is having some disadvantages, we'll focus more on these things. We'll just understand what are the disadvantages, but we will try to extract out its benefit based on these advantages. So we'll focus on advantages of supervised learning and unsupervised learning. So we'll just know these, but we will disregard. So we will not give much importance to this. We'll focus on advantages of supervised learning and advantages of unsupervised learning, and how those advantages can be utilized for ourselves. Those things we'll study. So this was all about supervised and unsupervised learning. So these methods we have studied. What are those different techniques that we have studied? In the next lectures, we will be studying problem of classification. What are the classification techniques? So we are going to see these classification techniques: KNN classifier, k-nearest neighbor classifier, decision tree, Neo-Bayesian classifier. That is in statistics, you were frightened of Bayesian approach. So whenever Bayesian word came over there, you were quite frightened. But in data mining, when all these other terminologies are quite difficult, this Bayesian becomes a familiar word for us. Now this is a good word for us. So that Neo-Bayesian is some pure statistical approach kind of thing. So this is just a direct application of Bayes theorem only. So that Neo-Bayesian approach is there. Based on that, we can classify the data. Then classification based on logistic regression. So these are the things that we will be studying in unit number 2. So in the next lecture, we will go with these techniques one by one.